Hello everyone, thanks for coming to the channel. Um, I've touched on this subject before, and I think it overlaps a little bit with the world of journalism, just a little bit. On the issue of journalism, journalists always have to judge what's professional and what's not. So, for example, how you approach witnesses or how you approach um, people who want to talk to the press, how it's done professionally versus sensationalistically, because there's a fine line between being a professional journalist and asking the right questions versus just behaving like a paparazzi, which, in my opinion, they're not journalists. They're stalkers. I saw a trailer actually. I don't want to digress too much, but I saw a trailer for a film, Paparazzi. I didn't recognize any of the actors, but it's a thriller from 2004, and it's about Hollywood A-lister who is harassed by these people, and then they set out to really destroy this man. He snaps at one of them, and he punches the guy, and then of course they all cluster out of the car because they've seen it. That's how the paparazzi behaves. But anyway, to cut a long story short, the synopsis of the film was that in a somewhat Princess Diana-like situation, his wife is killed in a car crash, being pursued by these paparazzos. Um, and this guy is receiving anger management because he struck out. Um, this is a sort of manipulative situations that they bring about. But anyway, he goes out for revenge. So it's a thriller. It looks like a good thriller, but it also looks a little bit close to the mark, like a little bit. That is pretty much what the paparazzi do. They're not only incredibly obnoxious, it's actually quite scary the extent they will go to. Um, Now, in this video, I'm not talking necessarily about the paparazzi, but it is an issue around personal space. And, most people have contempt for what the paparazzi do and they criticize it and they say that's obnoxious. One thing I've noticed though, in recent years, with the rise of how social media is used, we have seen a huge abundance of what I would call clickbait videos. Now, what these videos usually involve is very sensationalistic headline, which is intended to get you to watch it, and it's usually in the context of some sort of confrontation. Um, But what you see in these videos is someone supposedly being obnoxious, saying unpleasant things, or in some sort of situation where they are going to be somehow shamed. Like I say, it could be saying something unpleasant, or it could be doing something unpleasant. It might even be committing a criminal act. I came across one yesterday where a guy was using the disabled parking space of an Asda and another guy was filming him, and this man and his wife then confronted the cameraman, and it was a whole thing. Now, I took the view, and I was in a minority, I have to say. Most people were sort of saying, attacking the man for taking the space and applauding the person filming it. I took the view, well, yeah, clearly he's wrong to take the space that's designated for disabled people. It's difficult for them when they're wanting, they need this access. So it's obviously selfish to do that if you don't need it when you could just walk that small distance. So yeah, there's no controversy there. What I took issue with is, well, okay, the man's in the wrong, but what is the purpose of filming it? What's the purpose of filming it? And my question would be, are you filming something like this because you're trying to get evidence of wrongdoing, i.e., to show to the police? Or is it because you're trying to humiliate someone by shaming them and saying they've done this bad thing, that shame them and put it on the internet? I have to say, cynical side of me questions why people rush to put this sort of footage on the internet. If you really have a social conscience and you think someone is doing something wrong, then a good citizen will act on it and they'll inform the authorities. The other day, just to use a personal example, I saw some guys had lit in a fire in a public park here. Now this was right in the city centre. Very nice public park. If you know Sunderland, Mowbray Park. Um, I waited till I was a fair bit away because I didn't want them to see who was doing this. I phoned the police. Um, it's antisocial behaviour. I also then, on their advice, I phoned the fire service because these guys could have been drunk. They didn't know what they were doing. Probably they could have been drunk and they just staggered off and leave a burning fire. It's obviously dangerous. Not to mention it leaves a mess. It leaves a nasty black char. Um, so yeah, I felt I was doing the right thing as a citizen. Now, what I didn't do was film it and then put it on the internet just to kind of shame them. Although they probably, they were doing a bad thing. But I just wonder what is the point of rushing to the internet. It seemed to me it's more about the person filming trying to get their 15 minutes of fame with clickbait. Now, I'm not saying that that's the only motivation. They might genuinely be angry with the person, think, oh, well, they're wrong, I better shame them. But I do question the motivations if you're just going straight to the internet instead of the authorities. So in that situation, instead of filming and just putting on the internet, maybe the guy should have informed as the management that people are exploiting the parking designated for disabled people, or maybe remonstrated with the person. But I do question why it's filmed, and the internet is inundated with this stuff. And a lot of people get right in there to rush to judgment. I've done it. I'm guilty. I've judged those videos. I've judged people in them. But the truth is, those who have not sinned cast the first stone. My point is, I defy anyone to say that they have never ever done something bad. Now, there's different levels. Clearly, not everyone's going to be selfish and park in a disabled space, but um, I defy anyone to say that they're a saint, that they've never done something that they shouldn't have done. And I would then follow up and say, well, if that's the case, how would you have felt if some stranger, you know, brings out the camera and then puts it on the internet to try and shame you? I don't think you'd be happy about it. You'd either want to hide your face or you'd remonstrate with them. I do think there's something quite obnoxious about it. It seems like a sort of vigilanteism. And, this thing about, well, I'm in a public space so I can film. Well, technically it's true, but that doesn't mean that filming a stranger won't be seen for what it is, which is intrusive. So you may have legal rights to do it, but that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. I mean, I think this really depends on context. I think if you're witnessing a crime, it makes sense to film it for evidence, if it's clearly a crime. But frankly, I think some people are just being busybodies and they're just interfering in things that isn't necessarily hurting others. It could, for example, be a private argument, and someone's just deciding to stick their nose into it because they think that they know the full story and they don't. And it saddens me that so many people rush into this and they just rush into judging these videos before knowing the whole picture. So many videos, they start rolling halfway through an argument, not from the start of an argument. One of the most toxic things is where you have a heated argument and perhaps a racial term is used. Well, regardless of the background, the person using the racial term will be vilified and demonized. And I'm not saying they should use the term, but again, there's two sides to every story. Now, what's to say? Let's say person A um, does something to person B, right? Person A actually provoked a situation. Person A actually was a provocateur. Person B gets defensive and angry, and in the heat of the moment, they say something they shouldn't say, which is racially charged. Well, person B, despite the fact they didn't start the dispute, they're going to be the ones attacked and vilified. And I think it's somewhat unfair. Um, I'm not saying that people should use racist terms. I think race should be kept out of it. If I'm arguing with someone, I'm not going to say, their race is not going to be a factor unless they bring it up. Um, and I think it's one of the most obnoxious and cynical and manipulative things to do to use a race card. And I think some people do. Likewise, you get obnoxious racists who bring that into it when it's not got any connection. But I just think people need to be a bit wary about clickbait videos and videos in which, you question what is really the purpose of this. Um, I might start actually asking people who post these, what are you aiming to achieve with this? And what I find concerning is there's actually sites now offering people money for such videos. So there's a financial incentive to basically have confrontations, to basically, stick your camera in someone's face, try and get them to have a reaction, be angry, and then, oh, well, that's good. That's a good video. Again, just because it's a public space doesn't mean that shoving your camera in someone's face won't be seen as provocative. I wouldn't like a stranger going right up to me and filming me for no reason. I don't think anyone would. Now, the other side of that, of course, is that you get people who are overly paranoid. Someone might be filming in a public place for very legitimate reasons. They might be a journalist. They might be making a documentary. They might be a film student. Their hobby might be architecture, so they're taking pictures of different buildings. We're not a totalitarian society, so people should have the freedom to film in public. Um, Having said that, I don't agree with there's a group called Auditing Britain, and their whole thing is to go to police stations and basically film. And I really don't think they're doing much of a public service other than just trying to be provocative for provocative sake. I don't regard them as investigative journalists or I just don't think it's the best way to go about it. If they were exposing police corruption, or they were exposing police brutality, that would be a different matter. But going up to people, doing their job, a hard job, getting in their face, it just seems unnecessarily provocative. And some of those videos are borderline, well, bullying, really. I've seen some of them, for example, mocking the appearance of female officers in a rather misogynistic way. And full of comments like, oh, she's stupid. What university did she go to? There's all these sort of questions about intelligence when I'm thinking, well, actually, what were you really doing there? Were you really standing up for civic rights, or were you just trying to provoke for provocation's sake? People are human. Everyone is human. And, if you push someone hard enough, they will snap. You can't expect a police officer or a security guard to be a robot and not have a human response if you're behaving in a rude and obnoxious way. By the same token, there's no excuse for abuse of power. So I think all of this is about respect. I think that if someone is doing something wrong, I think it's legitimate to perhaps film them as evidence. But other than that, I think there's no legitimacy beyond that. I think if you're filming someone just to try and shame them on the internet, I think that's very cynical. And I would say just be careful that you're not caught out doing something that you shouldn't be doing, or saying something that you shouldn't be saying. I think it's very cynical, and it's another indictment of the negative side of social media. Because social media gives the platforms for this to happen. Before social media, there was no platform for this. You would have had confrontations, but it wouldn't be like thrust out there for millions of people to see. So I am skeptical of it. I've often thought if I'm in the situation, if someone thinks that they can remonstrate with me for something, what I might do is actually directly talk to the viewers and say, okay, this guy's filming me. He wants to make me look bad for whatever reason, or she does. So I'll speak directly to your viewers. You don't know the whole story. This is what happened. I talk directly to them because if that's their agenda, what they're trying to do is get a reaction. They want you to lash out. And I think it's almost paparazzi-like behavior. They want you to have a reaction, and I think it's obnoxious. Let me know your thoughts.